The Alien Fortress. The alien fortress stood tall on a barren, desolate planet, its walls glowing faintly under the cold, purple sky. It was said to be the strongest structure in the universe, unbreakable and indestructible. No force, no weapon, and no being had ever dared challenge it. For centuries, it stood as a symbol of power for the alien race known as the Varnax, a species feared across galaxies. Inside the fortress, the air buzzed with the sound of machinery and the low hum of energy shields. The alien leaders, a group of 6 tall and slender beings with glowing red eyes, sat around a circular table. They wore dark robes that shimmered in the dim light. Their leader, General Xalvok, leaned forward and tapped a holographic screen in front of him. "Our fortress is perfect," Xalvok said, his voice cold and metallic. "No one can enter without our permission. No weapon can harm us. Even the most advanced civilizations have tried and failed." The others nodded in agreement. One of them, a scientist named Drelkar, added, "The shields are impenetrable. The walls can withstand any explosion. And our defenses, they are unstoppable." They all laughed, their voices echoing through the room. It was clear they believed no one could ever threaten their fortress. It wasn't arrogance, it was confidence, built on centuries of watching every attacker fail. Far away, on a small blue planet called Earth, a man named Ryan sat in his tiny, cluttered apartment. Ryan wasn't a hero or a soldier. He wasn't even famous. He was just an ordinary man, someone who spent his days exploring strange signals from space as a hobby. That night, Ryan was staring at his computer screen, his eyes tired from hours of work. Suddenly, his screen flickered, and a strange map appeared. It wasn't like anything he had ever seen before. The map showed a planet he didn't recognize and a glowing dot at its center. "What is this?" Ryan whispered to himself. His heart began to race. He clicked on the map, and a message appeared. It was written in a language he didn't understand, but somehow he could read it. "You are the key. Only you can enter." Ryan stared at the words, confused. Why him? What did it mean? The message made no sense, but he couldn't ignore the feeling growing in his chest, like he was being called to something important. Over the next few days, Ryan tried to learn more about the map. He showed it to scientists and researchers, but no one believed him. "It's just a prank," one scientist said. "There's no such planet, and even if there were, what could a human do there?" But Ryan couldn't let it go. Something inside him told him he had to find this place. He sold everything he owned to buy a small spacecraft. It wasn't much, but it was enough to take him to the coordinates shown on the map. The journey was long and dangerous. Ryan faced meteors, solar storms, and technical failures. At one point, his ship's engine almost gave out, and he barely managed to fix it. But he never gave up. The map kept glowing on his screen, guiding him, as if it were alive. After weeks of travel, Ryan's ship finally reached the planet. It was dark and cold, with no signs of life. In the distance, he saw it, the fortress. It was larger than anything he had ever seen, stretching high into the sky. Its walls shimmered like liquid metal, and strange symbols glowed faintly on its surface. As Ryan's ship descended, alarms blared inside the fortress. General Xalvok and the other leaders stared at their screens in disbelief. "A human," Xalvok hissed. "How did he find us?" "It doesn't matter," Drelkar said with a smirk. "He won't get past the defenses." The fortress activated its weapons. Giant cannons rose from the ground, aiming directly at Ryan's small ship. Plasma shields surrounded the fortress, glowing brighter with each second. Ryan landed his ship and stepped out, his boots crunching on the rocky ground. He looked up at the fortress, feeling small but strangely calm. As he walked closer, the ground shook. The fortress's weapons turned toward him, ready to fire. And then, nothing happened. The cannons powered down. The plasma shields flickered and disappeared. The glowing symbols on the fortress walls began to pulse, almost like they were alive. Inside, The alien leaders froze. "What's happening?" One of them shouted. "Why aren't the defenses working?" Zalvak slammed his fist on the table. "This is impossible. No one can deactivate our systems." But Ryan kept walking. The massive gates of the fortress, which hadn't opened in centuries, began to creak. Slowly they swung open, revealing a dark, endless corridor inside. Ryan hesitated for a moment, then took a deep breath and stepped through the gates. The fortress seemed to welcome him. And the aliens, watching from their screens, could only stare in shock. How is this possible?" Zalvak whispered, his voice filled with fear. "The journey begins." Inside the alien fortress, the leaders watched in stunned silence. Their screens displayed Ryan walking through the colossal gates, his small figure dwarfed by the towering, glowing walls. They scrambled for answers. "This isn't random," hissed General Zalvak, his claws tapping on the control panel. "There must be an explanation. Scan him. Find out who he is." Drelkar's fingers danced over the controls, pulling up Ryan's biological data. "He's just human," Drelkar muttered, his voice full of disbelief. "No enhancements, no advanced tech, just an ordinary human." "Ordinary?" Zalvak spat. "Nothing about this is ordinary. If our defenses didn't stop him, there's a reason." Meanwhile, Ryan's footsteps echoed in the endless corridor. He wasn't sure what to expect, but something about the fortress felt strangely familiar. The glowing walls pulsed softly as he passed, like a heartbeat. Symbols etched into the metal flickered to life, lighting his path forward. Suddenly, his earpiece crackled. A robotic voice spoke, cold and monotone. "Subject identified. Ryan Harper. Access granted. Proceed to the core." Ryan froze. "The core? What core? What is this place?" His voice trembled, but he kept walking, the fortress seeming to guide him. Weeks earlier, Earth. Ryan's journey to this moment hadn't been easy. After receiving the strange map, he had faced doubt, ridicule, and danger at every turn. The scientists he approached dismissed him outright. "Aliens? A fortress? Ryan, this isn't a sci-fi movie," said Dr. Karen Yates, an astrophysicist at the local research institute. "Even if it were real, why would aliens choose you?" But the map wouldn't leave him alone. It glowed brighter each night, as if urging him to act. The cryptic message haunted him. "You are the key." One night, Ryan took a leap of faith. He sold his car, his furniture, everything. With the money, he bought an outdated spacecraft from a black market dealer. The ship was barely functional, but it was all he could afford. "Are you sure about this, mate?" asked the dealer, a scruffy man with grease-stained hands. "Space ain't kind to dreamers." Ryan didn't answer. He simply climbed aboard and punched in the coordinates from the map. The journey was brutal. Solar storms nearly fried his navigation system. At one point, a meteor grazed his ship, sending him spiraling. He worked tirelessly to keep the ship running, his hands blistered from repairing wires and consoles. Each night, as he stared out into the endless void, he wondered if he'd made a mistake. But every time doubt crept in, he looked at the map. Its glow reassured him, as if whispering, "Keep going." Present. The fortress interior. Ryan continued deeper into the fortress, the symbols on the walls growing brighter. The air was thick with energy, and the faint hum of machinery grew louder. Then, without warning, a section of the floor shifted. A platform rose beneath Ryan, lifting him into the air. He gasped and grabbed onto the railing, watching as the corridor below vanished. The platform moved quickly, carrying him toward a new chamber. Inside the control room, Zalvak and his team monitored every movement. "The fortress is responding to him," Drelkar said, his voice shaking. "It's like it knows him." "That's impossible," Zalvak barked. "This fortress has been under our control for centuries." "Has it?" Drelkar muttered under his breath, earning a glare from the general. As Ryan stepped off the platform, he entered a massive chamber filled with floating orbs of light. The air shimmered, and a soft voice echoed around him, speaking in a language he didn't understand. Yet, somehow, he knew what it meant. "Welcome, descendant. You have much to learn." Ryan's eyes widened. Descendant. Descendant of who? The orbs rearranged themselves, forming a three-dimensional map of the galaxy. Certain points glowed brightly, marking what appeared to be other fortresses. Inside the alien control room, the alien leaders panicked. "Look at the map," shouted one of them. "Those locations, they matched the ancient ruins we've been trying to unlock for years." Drelkar leaned closer to the screen, his voice trembling. What if we've misunderstood this fortress all along? What if it isn't just a weapon? What if it's a key? A key to what? Zelvok demanded, though deep down he feared the answer. Ryan's revelation. Ryan stared at the galaxy map. He didn't understand everything, but one thing was clear. This fortress wasn't just a structure. It was part of something much bigger. Then, the voice spoke again. "Proceed to the next phase." The platform beneath Ryan shifted again, carrying him toward another chamber. This time, the walls were lined with strange machines, their surfaces covered in glowing glyphs. Suddenly, the floor trembled. The alien leaders had activated an override, attempting to lock down the fortress. Ryan felt the shift. The voice returned, now more urgent. "Danger detected. Override in progress. Hurry." Ryan broke into a run, the lights guiding him forward. He didn't know what awaited him, but he could feel the weight of something immense, something ancient, calling him forward. The alien panic. Ryan stood before the massive door, its surface shimmering with an almost liquid glow. The fortress pulsed around him, and the light intensified as he placed his hand on the strange, smooth surface. A low rumble echoed through the corridor as the door began to part, revealing a chamber bathed in golden light. Inside the alien fortress's control room, chaos erupted. The alien leaders stared at their monitors, disbelief etched on their faces. General Salvok slammed his clawed hand against the console. "Override the system now," he barked. "Seal that chamber before he reaches the core." "I'm trying." Drelkar snapped back, his hands frantically working the controls. The fortress isn't responding. It's treating him as the rightful owner. "Owner?" Hexalvok's voice was a venomous hiss. "This fortress belongs to the Varnax. It has for generations." Drelkar hesitated, his glowing red eyes narrowing. "Or so we thought." Inside the chamber, Ryan stepped through the doorway into a space unlike anything he had ever seen. The walls were covered with intricate carvings, glowing softly with symbols that seemed to shift and rearrange themselves as he moved. At the center of the chamber stood a large pedestal, and above it floated a holographic sphere, pulsating with a golden hue. As Ryan approached, the sphere reacted, sending ripples of light across the room. The voice returned, calm but commanding. "Core activation requires confirmation. Place your hand on the pedestal." Ryan hesitated, his mind racing. "What's going on? Why me? What is this place?" He muttered under his breath. The voice didn't answer his questions. It only repeated its command. "Place your hand on the pedestal." Taking a deep breath, Ryan stepped closer. His fingers trembled as he touched the pedestal. The moment his hand made contact, the entire chamber lit up, and the walls transformed into vast screens, displaying scenes of ancient history. The truth unveiled. The images showed towering humanoid beings, their technology advanced beyond imagination. They constructed the fortress eons ago, not as a weapon, but as a safeguard. The voice narrated the scenes. "This fortress was built by your ancestors, the Lumerans, a species that once thrived across the galaxy. Their knowledge and power were unmatched, but they disappeared, leaving behind only their creations to guide their descendants." Ryan's eyes widened. "You're saying humans are connected to them? We're descendants?" The voice continued. The Varnacs took control of this fortress, but they could never access its true purpose. Only a Lumaran descendant can awaken its core. That descendant is you. The revelation sent shivers down Ryan's spine. He wasn't just an explorer stumbling upon a mystery. He was part of something far greater. The alien control room. Back in the control room, panic reached its peak. The alien leaders were no longer in control, and the fortress seemed to be alive, responding only to Ryan's actions. "We have to stop him," one of the aliens shouted. "If he activates the core, the fortress will recognize him as its master. Send the drones." Zalvok ordered, his voice cold and steady despite the chaos. "If the systems won't respond, we'll deal with him the old-fashioned way." Within moments, a swarm of robotic drones, sleek and deadly, rose from hidden compartments within the fortress walls. They moved silently, their glowing red sensors locking onto Ryan's position. Ryan's encounter. Ryan was still absorbing the stunning revelation when the sound of whirring metal echoed through the chamber. He turned to see the drones approaching, their weapons charged and ready. The voice in the chamber shifted, now firm and protective. "Threat detected. Activating defensive protocol." Suddenly, the carvings on the walls emitted beams of light that struck the drones mid-flight. One by one, they were disabled, falling to the ground in smoldering heaps. Ryan stood frozen, watching the fortress defend him. "Okay," he muttered, his heart pounding. "That's both amazing and terrifying." The alien leader's desperation. In the control room, Zalvok's fury boiled over. "How is this possible? Those drones are unstoppable." "It's him," Drelkar said, his voice filled with awe and fear. "The fortress recognizes him as its master. We were never its true owners." Zalvok refused to accept defeat. "If the fortress belongs to him, then we'll destroy it before he can use it against us." Drelkar stared at him in shock. "You can't be serious. This fortress is our only protection against the Zixan Empire. If we destroy it..." "Enough," Zalvok roared. "Prepare the self-destruct sequence. I will not let a human take what belongs to us." Ryan's discovery. Oblivious to the alien leader's plan, Ryan stood before the holographic sphere, which now displayed a new image. A network of fortresses scattered across the galaxy. Each one glowed faintly, waiting to be activated. "This is the first of many," the voice explained. "Your ancestors left these fortresses to protect the galaxy from an ancient threat. They were meant to be activated only when the time was right." Ryan frowned. "What threat? What are we supposed to protect against?" Before the voice could answer, the chamber trembled violently. A countdown appeared on the walls, and alarms blared. "Warning. Self-destruct initiated. Evacuate immediately." Ryan's heart sank. Self-destruct. What? No, no, no. Inside the fortress, the walls of the fortress shifted and reformed as Ryan ran, guided by pulsing beams of light along the floor. Behind him, the rumbling of explosions grew louder. The countdown blared, filling the air with urgency. Warning. Self-destruct imminent. 10 minutes. Ryan reached the last platform, his legs trembling from exhaustion. In front of him stood a massive door, glowing with the same golden light as the pedestal he had touched earlier. But before he could approach, a loud metallic screech echoed through the chamber. He turned to see the drones, their red eyes glowing menacingly as they hovered toward him. "You've got to be kidding me," Ryan muttered, clenching his fists. The voice of the fortress returned. "Defense protocol activated. Hold your ground." Suddenly, the carvings on the walls began to glow, releasing beams of energy that shot toward the drones. Ryan ducked as explosions erupted around him, the drones falling one by one. But the largest drone dodged the beams, advancing toward Ryan. Its weapon arm hummed with energy, preparing to fire. Ryan's heart pounded as he scanned the platform for something. Anything that could help him. Then he noticed a glowing symbol on the floor, similar to the ones he'd seen during the trials. Without thinking, he stepped on it, and a surge of light erupted from beneath his feet. The drone froze mid-air, its systems fried, before it collapsed into the abyss. Ryan stared at the glowing platform, panting. "Thanks for the assist," he said to the fortress. "Proceed to the control nexus," the voice replied. Reaching the core, the massive door opened, revealing a circular chamber bathed in golden light. At its center was the control nexus, a towering crystal structure surrounded by floating symbols and streams of light. Ryan approached cautiously. The voice returned, softer this time. "Place your hand on the nexus. Disable the self-destruct." He hesitated, his mind racing. Was this all some kind of trap? But as the countdown reached 5 minutes, he knew he had no choice. Ryan placed his hand on the crystal. Instantly, the room flooded with light, and the countdown stopped. The rumbling ceased, and the fortress grew quiet. Self-destruct sequence aborted. Core activation complete. Ryan exhaled in relief, but before he could celebrate, the voice continued. "Warning. External interference detected. Prepare for confrontation." The truth revealed. Ryan stood at the center of the control nexus, his hand still resting on the glowing crystal. The chamber hummed with energy, but the tranquil atmosphere was shattered as General Zalvok's holographic projection materialized before him. The alien leader's tall, menacing form loomed, his glowing red eyes filled with rage. "You think you've won, human," Zalvok snarled. "You've merely delayed the inevitable." Ryan stepped back, his hand clenching into a fist. "This fortress doesn't belong to you. It never did. It's responding to me because it knows the truth. You stole it." Zalvok's face twisted into a cruel smile. "The Varnaks take what they need. That is why we rule and others fall. But if you think this fortress is yours to control, you are gravely mistaken." Zalvok's plan unfolds. Back in the alien control room, Drelkar watched as Zalvok executed his final command. A massive warship, hidden deep beneath the fortress, began to power up. Its engines roared to life, shaking the ground. "General, this is madness," Drelkar shouted. "You'll destroy everything." Zalvok turned to him, his voice cold and commanding. "If we cannot have the fortress, neither will he. The warship will annihilate the core, and the human along with it." "But the fortress is a relic of the Lumerans," Drelkar argued. "Its secrets could change everything. We can't just—" "Enough," Zalvok growled. "Prepare for launch." As the warship began to ascend, the ground above cracked and split, revealing its massive, jagged hull. Its cannons aimed directly at the heart of the fortress. Ryan's desperate stand. In the Nexus chamber, Ryan felt the tremors and saw cracks forming in the walls. The fortress's voice returned, calm but urgent. "Warning. External threat detected. Warship targeting core. Defensive systems compromised." Ryan's heart raced. Compromised? What am I supposed to do? The crystal in the center of the Nexus emitted a beam of light, projecting a holographic figure of a Lumeran, a tall, ethereal being with glowing silver eyes and an air of wisdom. The figure looked at Ryan, its expression calm yet firm. "Descendant, you are more than a key. You are the fortress's guardian. Its power is tied to your will. Defend it, or all will be lost." Ryan stared at the hologram, confused. "How? I don't know how any of this works." The Lumeran smiled faintly. "You do. Trust yourself." Suddenly, the room flooded with light. Ryan felt energy coursing through his body, as if the fortress itself was merging with him. Symbols flashed before his eyes, and he instinctively understood their meaning. The voice of the fortress spoke again. "Activate the Sentinel." The Sentinel awakens. Ryan reached out, his hand glowing as he touched a new set of symbols on the Nexus. The ground trembled, and a section of the chamber's floor slid open, revealing a hidden platform. From it rose a towering machine, an ancient Lumeran sentinel, dormant for centuries. The sentinel was a humanoid construct, its sleek metallic body adorned with glowing glyphs. Its eyes flickered to life as Ryan took control, his movements mirrored by the massive machine. The fortress's voice guided him. "The Sentinel is linked to you. Use it to protect the core." As Ryan stepped forward, controlling the Sentinel, he saw the warship looming above, its cannons charging for a devastating strike. The battle begins. The warship unleashed its first blast, a massive beam of energy aimed directly at the fortress. Ryan moved the Sentinel with newfound precision, raising its arm to generate a shimmering energy shield. The beam struck the shield, causing a shockwave that rippled across the fortress but left the core unharmed. Inside the warship, Xalvok's rage intensified. "Increase power. Overload the cannons if you must. That fortress will fall." The warship's cannons began to glow brighter, charging for a second strike. Ryan, still adjusting to the Sentinel's controls, felt a surge of determination. He activated the Sentinel's weapons, a series of energy projectiles that launched toward the warship. They struck its hull, causing explosions that rocked the massive ship. But the warship wasn't done. Dozens of smaller drones emerged from its sides, swarming toward the fortress and the Sentinel. Ryan's focus sharpened as he moved the Sentinel to intercept them, its energy blades slicing through the oncoming swarm. Drelkar's defection. Back in the alien control room, Drelkar made a decision. He couldn't let Xalvok's arrogance destroy something as important as the fortress. As the general barked orders, Drelkar secretly began rerouting the warship's systems. "General," Drelkar said, keeping his voice calm, "perhaps we should retreat. The human is clearly capable of." "We do not retreat," Xalvok snarled. "We crush those who stand against us." But before Xalvok could say more, the warship's systems flickered. Drelkar had disabled key components, weakening the cannons and slowing the ship's movement. "What is happening?" Xalvok roared. Drelkar turned to him, his voice steady. "This madness ends now. Ryan's victory." With the warship's systems faltering, Ryan seized the opportunity. He guided the Sentinel in a final decisive strike, unleashing a beam of concentrated energy that pierced the warship's hull. The ship began to collapse, its power core destabilizing. Inside the ship, Xalvok's face twisted with fury. "This isn't over, human," he shouted, just before the screen cut to static. The warship erupted in a massive explosion, its fiery remains scattering across the planet's surface. Ryan deactivated the Sentinel and stepped back, his body trembling with exhaustion. The fortress's voice returned, softer this time. "Threat neutralized. Core secure." Ryan collapsed to his knees, staring at the glowing crystal. He had won, but he knew this was only the beginning. The final challenge. The fortress quieted after the explosion of the warship, leaving Ryan in the glowing chamber with the Lumaran hologram. He was exhausted, both physically and mentally, but the words of the hologram echoed in his mind. "The real battle lies ahead." Ryan stood, steadying himself against the crystal at the heart of the Nexus. He looked at the holographic figure, its silver eyes filled with ancient wisdom. "What darkness are you talking about?" Ryan asked, his voice firm despite his fatigue. "What am I supposed to fight?" The Lumaran hologram paused, then raised its hand. The walls of the chamber shifted, transforming into a swirling display of the galaxy. The stars burned bright, but Ryan noticed dark voids creeping between them, like shadows devouring the light. "The architects of the void," the Lumaran said. "An ancient enemy. They seek to extinguish all life, to consume everything. The fortresses were built as the first line of defense, but we failed to stop them. Now, they stir again. And you must finish what we could not." Ryan's chest tightened. The weight of the revelation threatened to overwhelm him, but he pushed the fear aside. "How am I supposed to fight something like that? I don't even know what I'm doing here." The hologram's expression softened. "You are not alone. The other fortresses hold the power and knowledge of your ancestors, but they too are dormant, waiting for one who can awaken them. This is your mission. Ryan nodded slowly, determination building within him. Then tell me where to start. Drulkar's warning. Meanwhile, Drulkar, still in the alien control room, watched the aftermath of the warship's destruction. The screens displayed Ryan standing before the hologram, and for the first time, Drulkar felt a flicker of hope. But his thoughts were interrupted by a sharp alarm. He turned to see a new reading on the fortress's scanners, something massive approaching from the edges of the system. His glowing red eyes widened in fear. "It can't be," he whispered. "Not now." Before he could act, Zalvok's voice rang out, crackling through the fortress's communication system. "This isn't over, human. You may have destroyed the warship, but you haven't won." Drulkar slammed his fists on the console. "Zalvok, stop this madness. The Varnax can't fight what's coming." Zalvok laughed, his voice filled with bitter defiance. "Then we'll die fighting." The transmission cut out, leaving Drulkar to act alone. He activated a hidden communicator, sending a direct message to the core chamber. An unlikely alliance. Ryan's gaze snapped toward a small console in the corner of the Nexus chamber as Drulkar's voice came through. "Human, listen to me," Drulkar said urgently. "This isn't just your fight anymore. The architects of the void are here, and we're all in danger." Ryan frowned. "Why should I trust you? Your people just tried to kill me." Drulkar hesitated, his tone softening. "Because if we don't work together, we'll all be dead. The architects don't care about our wars or who controls this fortress. They only care about consuming everything in their path." Ryan looked at the hologram, which gave a subtle nod of agreement. He sighed. "Fine. What do you want me to do?" "The fortress has a hidden weapon," Drulkar explained. "It was never meant to be used by the Varnax. We didn't even know it existed until now. But you can activate it. It's the only thing that might stop them." The activation chamber. Guided by Drulkar and the fortress, Ryan made his way to the fortress's deepest level. The path was treacherous, with the walls rumbling as the architect's presence drew closer. The air grew colder, and strange whispers filled the corridors, as if the fortress itself was reacting to the impending threat. Ryan finally reached the activation chamber, a vast, spherical room with a glowing core suspended at its center. Strange, floating glyphs surrounded the core, shifting and rearranging themselves. The fortress's voice spoke again. "To activate the weapon, you must link your mind to the core. But be warned, the process will test your strength. Fail, and the weapon will remain dormant." Ryan swallowed hard. Of course, it's never easy. He stepped forward, placing his hands on the core. Instantly, his mind was flooded with memories, not his own, but those of the Lumerans. He saw their civilization at its height, their battles against the architects, their desperation as they realized they couldn't win. The visions grew darker, more intense. Ryan felt their fear, their pain, their hope. It was overwhelming, but he refused to let go. The architects arrive. Above the fortress, the sky darkened as massive, shadowy ships emerged from the void. Their shapes were unlike anything Ryan had ever seen, twisting and shifting as if they were alive. Tendrils of darkness extended from the ships, wrapping around the planet like a predator claiming its prey. Drulkar watched from the control room, his claws trembling. "They're here." The fortress's defenses activated, but the architect's ships absorbed the energy blasts, their tendrils reaching toward the fortress. The weapon awakens. Inside the activation chamber, Ryan gritted his teeth, his body trembling under the strain of the connection. The core glowed brighter, and the glyphs began to align, forming a single, intricate pattern. Suddenly, the fortress's voice spoke, louder and more powerful than before. "Weapon activation complete. Target, architects of the void." The room shook as the fortress unleashed its power. A massive beam of energy shot into the sky, striking the nearest shadow ship. The ship writhed and screamed, its very form collapsing as it was torn apart. Humanity's rise. The fortress fell silent after its weapon obliterated the first architect's ship. The dark tendrils that had wrapped around the planet recoiled momentarily, retreating like a wounded predator. But the respite was brief. The remaining architect ships loomed above, their shifting, shadowy forms emitting a low, bone-chilling hum that seemed to resonate with the planet itself. Ryan stood in the activation chamber, his body trembling from exhaustion. The Lumaran hologram remained before him, its silver eyes locked onto his. "You've done well, Descendant, but this battle is not over. The architects have studied us for eons. They will adapt." Ryan clenched his fists. "Then what am I supposed to do? The fortress can't hold them off forever." The hologram extended its hand, revealing the new set of glowing symbols. "This fortress is but one part of the whole. To end this threat, you must awaken the others." The network of fortresses was designed to work as one, each enhancing the other's power. Together, they can end the architects for good. Ryan's gaze followed the symbols, which morphed into a galactic map. Several points of light scattered across the void, each marking the location of a dormant fortress. "Great," Ryan muttered. "No pressure or anything." The architects strike back. Above the fortress, the architects began their counterattack. The remaining ships unleashed torrents of black energy, each blast warping reality itself. The fortress's shields flared as they absorbed the strikes, but cracks began to form. Drelkar, watching from the alien control room, felt a chill run through him. "The fortress can't take much more of this. We need to do something." He turned toward the communication console and hesitated. For centuries, the Varnaks had believed themselves invincible, rulers of the galaxy. Now they were faced with an enemy they couldn't defeat, an enemy the humans might be the key to stopping. Swallowing his pride, Drelkar initiated a direct link to the activation chamber. "Human." Drelkar's voice echoed through the chamber. "If you can hear me, I've rerouted what's left of our fleet's power to the fortress. It's not much, but it might buy you enough time to escape." Ryan smirked, though he was still catching his breath. "Thanks for the vote of confidence, but I'm not going anywhere. If this fortress falls, none of us survive." A desperate gamble. The Lumaran hologram watched the exchange silently before speaking. "There is one final option. The core's power can be overcharged, releasing a single blast strong enough to destroy the remaining ships." Ryan frowned. "What's the catch?" "The blast will drain the fortress completely. Its systems will shut down, and you will no longer have its protection. You must decide, hold the line or retreat to awaken the others." The choice weighed heavily on Ryan. He glanced at the holographic map of the galaxy, the dormant fortresses glowing faintly. If he stayed and overcharged the core, the immediate threat would be neutralized, but the fortress and its unique weapon would be lost. If he left, the architects would regroup, and their destruction could spread unchecked. Ryan took a deep breath. "There's no point in running if I can't slow them down." Overcharge the core. The final blast. The fortress's systems roared to life as Ryan activated the overcharge sequence. The entire structure shook, beams of light cascading through its corridors. In the control room, Drelkar braced himself as the power surge overwhelmed the fortress's defenses. Above, the architect ships moved closer, their tendrils stretching toward the glowing structure. They seemed to sense the impending danger, their forms shifting and twisting as they prepared to strike. Ryan stood at the center of the nexus, his hand on the crystal, as the fortress's voice echoed around him. "Overcharge at 90%. Brace for impact." The remaining architect ships unleashed a final devastating barrage of black energy, but it was too late. The fortress released its full power in a single blinding beam of light that cut through the darkness, obliterating the ships in an instant. The shockwave rippled across the planet, shaking the ground and silencing everything. The aftermath. When the light faded, the fortress was silent. Its walls, once glowing with vibrant energy, now dimmed to a cold, metallic gray. Ryan collapsed to the floor, the weight of his decision settling over him. Drelkar's voice crackled through the comms. "You did it, human. The ships are gone." Ryan exhaled heavily, pulling himself to his feet. "Yeah, but at what cost? The fortress is offline, and we've only delayed the architects." The Lumaran hologram reappeared, though its form flickered. "The core is dormant, but the knowledge remains. The network is still within reach. You must continue your mission." Ryan looked at the galactic map, its faint lights still marking the locations of the other fortresses. "How am I supposed to get to them without the fortress's power?" Drelkar's voice cut in. "You won't have to do it alone. The Varnaks owe you a debt. Our remaining ships are at your disposal. We may have been your enemies, but against the architects, we have no choice but to stand together." Ryan raised an eyebrow. "Didn't see that coming." A new purpose. With the architect's immediate threat neutralized, Ryan prepared to leave the planet. He boarded a Varnak scout ship provided by Drelkar, its systems now linked to the galactic map from the fortress. The Lumaran hologram transferred itself into the ship's database, a guiding presence for the journey ahead. As the ship ascended into the atmosphere, Ryan looked out at the ruins of the fortress, a bittersweet feeling washing over him. He had survived, but the battle was far from over. The call to action. The ship's controls hummed as the hologram spoke. "The next fortress awaits on a distant world. Its power will be harder to unlock, and the architects will grow stronger with each step you take." Ryan gripped the controls, his gaze fixed on the stars ahead. "Let them come. We're not just fighting for Earth, we're fighting for the whole galaxy. And I'm not giving up." As the ship sped into the void, the map lit up with new possibilities, and Ryan's resolve solidified. The architects might have been ancient and powerful, but humanity had something they could never match: the will to rise, fight, and endure. Closing scene. Far beyond Ryan's reach, in the cold depths of space, a massive architect ship stirred. Larger and more ominous than any before, it pulsed with dark energy, its tendrils spreading like cracks through the stars. The architects had noticed the human, and now they were coming for him.